Hi, in this video, I'll go over how to complete SSA Form 3369, also known as the Work History Report. This form helps the Social Security Administration understand how your medical condition affects your ability to work. The SSA requests this form after you submit an initial application. The form will have a specific deadline on it, and one of the few actions you can take to get an application decision faster is to submit the form by the deadline. The Work History Report will ask questions about the jobs you've held before you were too sick to work. They're looking for 5 years of work information, like your day-to-day responsibilities and pay rates. You can find the Work History Report on SSA.gov, or you can get a copy at your local SSA office. First things first, scan the form before you start filling it out, and make sure you have the documentation you need to answer the questions. To help jog your memory, you could refer to your resume or CV while you complete the form. It can also be helpful to print out copies of your past pay stubs if you have them. You'll also need your Social Security number. Okay, section 1. The first section is your identification info. Fill out your first name, middle initial, and last name, your Social Security number, and list a phone number where the Social Security Administration can reach you during the daytime. Section 2. This section will require you to go back in time and list all the jobs you held in the 5 years before becoming disabled. You'll need to write down the job title, type of business, and dates you worked, with the month and year you started and ended the job. You can list more job titles and dates on the remarks page if you need more space than provided. Okay, don't do any resume fluffing here. List a representative job title. If you did custodial work, write down custodian or janitor. Don't say that you were an environmental sanitation specialist. You must accurately represent your work to the SSA, especially if you had a physically demanding job. On the next page, you'll provide estimated hours and pay for that first job. You'll also write a description of your daily responsibilities. Now, this is a really important section. You've probably heard that it's best to describe how your disability affects you on your worst or average days rather than your good days. And you should follow that principle here. Describe your duties at their most frequent and demanding, not as they were on your easier days at your job, and focus on what you had to do in physical terms. For example, don't just say that your role involved filing. Instead, say you lift 10-pound boxes of printing paper regularly. When describing your limitations, don't estimate. For example, if you had to carry lighting equipment as a photo studio manager, don't just guess and say you lifted about 40 pounds. Do some quick research to check what they actually weighed, because the more specific, the better. Be sure to mention any unusual but regular duties for a job. Maybe you worked as a receptionist, but you also handled package deliveries and managed the conference room before the meetings, including setup and breakdown. If those responsibilities are beyond your capabilities now, mention them. Help the SSA understand why these jobs are out of reach for you. For the last part, you'll note whether you supervised other people on the job. If yes, write down how many people you supervised and what part of your time was spent supervising. This helps the SSA understand the level of leadership or supervisory experience in your work history. Next, the SSA here wants to determine the physical, technical, and cognitive demands of your past jobs. They also want to assess your transferable skills here. You'll estimate the total number of hours you spent each day performing certain tasks, like walking, climbing, kneeling, or grasping big objects. This is where you show the SSA that you cannot do your past work. So don't make it impossible to prove your disability. Even if you worked a sedentary job, don't put 0 for walking, standing, or lifting. Really think back to your day-to-day tasks. Did you have to carry a laptop, walk to other departments in the office, set up a boardroom, replace the water jug in the break room? And make sure the total hours amount to a typical workday. Then you'll give more information about lifting and carrying. Write down what you lifted, the distance you carried it, and how often you did this. Check the heaviest weight you lifted. You could choose less than 10 pounds, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds or more, or other. For context, a standard box of printer paper is 10 pounds, and a case of bottled water is 30 pounds. Again, do your research here. Next, you'll check off the weight you lifted most frequently. Okay, the SSA defines frequently as 1/3 to 2/3 of your workday. Continue these steps for each of your jobs over the 5-year period. Use the remarks section at the end of the form if you need additional space. If you're completing this form on behalf of someone else applying for disability benefits, print your name, mailing address, and email address, and the date at the bottom of the form. We know the disability application process can feel like an endless slog of paperwork. A disability lawyer can help you complete forms, request medical records, and submit everything to the SSA on time. At Atticus, we've helped tens of thousands of Americans apply for disability benefits. Click the link to connect with an Atticus client advocate today and get help with your application.